Okay, everybody, cue spoon and music in three, two, one.
Welcome back, everybody, to the SpewnedIt podcast, and we're gonna just kick things right off here. Joel, I hear you have a story for us.
I do. So I was thinking about this the other day, because I was watching my little brother. So he's having to do online school at the moment, and whether or not that has changed when this podcast comes out. Anyways, it's been this whole thing that he's had to do, and bless him, it's very tough for him. And I was thinking, I've never had to do that, and so obviously, we might get into that. I believe you may have, Jensen. So I'd like to hear your take on that. But one of the early memories of being homeschooled that I have. So this is when I was probably only about 7 or 8 years old at this point. So me and a good friend of mine at the time, this guy called Moses or Mo Clay, we were getting on my mum's nerves, bless her. She was a really good teacher, but we could cause some trouble. And so it got to the point she was quite angry at this point, and she was starting to raise her voice at us. And then the best thing happened. Okay, she lost her voice, and so then she's having to yell at us like this and say, "You've got to listen to me." And me and Moses we lost it. We could not keep. I think it got to the point my mum had to say, right, today's a day off because we can't, we're like, you guys are just not listening right now, and it was driving her insane. But that is one of the best things that has happened to me in school ever. That was one of the funniest, best moments of my young school career, if you will.
Yeah.
And then I've just ended up getting homeschooled for 8. How long were you homeschooled for in total?
Yeah, so I mean, I did not go to any kind of public school. Well, it wasn't even public until the school in Uganda, which was part of the organization we both lived at for a time. So I guess my primary mode of homeschooling would have been all the way through till my second year of high school when we were back in the States for a year, and I went to public school then, and then continued on. Yeah, because even my online school was it was an online school geared towards homeschooling, where if you could take some subject that maybe was a little bit harder to homeschool, like a higher level, like secondary English course, or whatever, like your parents maybe weren't, what their strong suit wasn't, and they wanted someone else to come in and help teach, like science, or and then you can get the experiment kits and have a whole curriculum around it, which you can do with regular homeschool too. But
yeah, no, exactly.
Anyway,
just the slightly more complicated bits, really. Yeah, no, I understand that. I think because I got homeschooled from basically day one of being in Uganda. It was like, right, this is just what's going to happen. So I just turned 7 by that point. I didn't even know what year that is. That must have been like year 2 or something. So very, very early on. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting homeschooled all the way through until I was about 12 or 13, really. And then there was the choice of either, and like you said, Jens, I also did a few lessons at the little local school around the corner, which which I think was a brilliant experience, because at that age I didn't really have any feel of what an actual school was like. So that was, it was good to have that experience. But then, so at 13, we stopped being homeschooled. My family and I moved into the capital city, and then we started going to this private school rather, which was brilliant. It was class. But that first day, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever been so scared in my entire life. That first day, I was so nervous. I didn't know anyone, and I was like, this is mental for me. But yeah, and then I can't even remember how long it took me to sort of properly settle in, really. But it was such a major change to go from, polar opposites, I'd say personally, of
right.
the education. I don't know what word to use, but of education, maybe just in general. It's completely the other end of it, which was a massive, massive shock to the system.
Yeah, because in homeschool,
age,
in homeschool, you're working with your siblings and maybe the other kids in the area, which for us was actually a decent group, because it was like me, you, Jeremiah, Justin, Brevin, Jonica, later Kara, but that maybe was after you moved. So there's a decent crew of us, but like it was, 7 to 10, whereas you're going into a school of, several hundred. And it's funny you mentioned, you were nervous in a social setting, because I think that experience probably for you kind of built your, like these days I can't picture you being nervous to meet anybody. Like what's actually funny is I think you get this from your dad too, is where like I remember when the president came to our place in Uganda, and your dad just like strolled up and gave him a handshake. It was like the most nonchalant. He's like, "Hey, how's it going, man?" And like, this is the most powerful man in the country. This is, essentially a dictator who's been in power for like 30 years. He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" It was brilliant.
He came in on a helicopter, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, it was crazy. It was madness. Your sister shook his hand as well. That was the funniest part to me.
She was in her best outfit. She was in the Snow White costume outfit, and the president was like, "Whoa, who's dressing up for the occasion?" Oh man, what a day! But yeah, so I mean, it was good to have that security though, and I think like obviously this could go into a whole debate, which I don't want to get into, of like which is better or pros and cons, and both were good, and I'm very glad that I got to experience both, because it was just, I think it's essential to learn those social skills at that age, and one of the only ways to do that is to be chucked in the deep end, and just be like, right, there's all these guys around here, make some friends, and it was. Yeah, I mean, it was scary, but it was brilliant, creating the building blocks. Did you? What was the experience, or a similar experience like that for you, of going from one extent to the other? Did you ever have that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think one of them was certainly going to the primary school, doing P7, which is kind of like the final year of their primary school in Uganda at the place we were at. And that was crazy, because I knew like one or two kids in that classroom just from, hanging around with them at our family group, local, church gathering and whatnot. And so I didn't really know anybody in that classroom. And that's, it's half taught in a different language I didn't speak. So that was like extreme deep end. I think a more similar experience compared to the one that you did in your international school was when I actually went to public high school when we were on our furlough for a year during my sophomore year of high school, which is year 2. And it was definitely a deep end experience, except for I had my life preserver, if you will, because I had lived in the area, and I knew a bunch of the kids who were in that school just from like community basketball leagues and stuff before we moved. So I had and some of them were really close friends of mine, like Dylan, who is to this day, and there were a couple others that I knew. Oh, Kevin, who lived down the street. My friend Joe. But
it wasn't like 100% new, basically, is what.
Yeah, not 100%. But it's a school of almost 2,000 kids, going from my school of 5 to 2,000, and I know 4 of them.
Oh no, yeah.
But there's different things that acclimated me to. Like I'm a pretty friendly person. I'm open to meeting new folks. So I did that, and I know, hard for you to believe. You're scoffing over there. But, and immediately too, actually, even before school started, we did some activities with like the football team. We like cleaned up the campus.
Oh,
so
nice.
I met some guys from that, and that was a big plus for me as well, because you're practicing with them every day, and so you get to know people through that as well.
But so
which is fun.
you only did that for a year though, so you knew as soon as you got there, this is only going to be like a year's time during the furlough. How did that? Did that change your perspective of like, I'm only going to be here a year and then I'm going to head off again? Did that change the way, like, you felt about the whole thing, or did it keep, would you imagine that you would have had the same mindset if you were going to go there for like the next 3-4 years?
I'm going to say, I don't, if anything, knowing that I was only going to be there for a year motivated me more to like go all in. I did sports 2 of the 3 semesters. Which is just, it's like every day after school for 2-3 hours you're out there doing stuff. So I was just busy. I had fun with different school projects. We made like, as opposed to doing a typical stand up there and read off your presentation, me and my friends would make like feature length videos, not feature length, but a 10-minute, 15-minute like news video broadcast with a friend of ours who had like a green screen and fancy camera, and we did like on the field reporting. It was great. It was fun. It was so much more work than just standing up there and doing what everybody else did. But we gave it our all, and I had a blast. And I definitely did not want to leave. I was like, man, I like know people there's people here to hang out with. I can do sports. I
Yeah.
can, get my driver's license and have a good time. So yeah, I did not want
Yeah.
to leave after that. That was tough. There was
No, I can
one
imagine.
blessing later, was that during my senior year, 2 years later, I did get to come back and do. I didn't go to classes there, but I did do classes at the local community college, like through that school, which is I don't know, it's a program
Ah.
called Running Start. So that was neat, and it allowed me to do track as well, which I really enjoyed.
Oosh, yes, I remember us talking about that ages
That
ago
was-
now,
that
and
was-
that you were so like massive about that. Like you were such a big fan of that. It was good.
That was great. That was one of some of my best school memories ever, was sports, and specifically track, because it was like me, Dylan, our friend Silas, we're like the top 3 hurdlers on the team. We're traveling all the events together. It's a really tight-knit group out of like, it's a team of like 200 people, because nobody gets cut, so tons of kids sign
Yeah.
up. Not everybody sticks all the way through it, of course, but you get like your kind of position groups, essentially, like the guys who do the same events
Yeah.
that you're practicing with every day and doing reps with, and making jokes and memories. It's brilliant. I recommend anybody to do track, because you get in shape. It's such a social sport, and everyone's cheering
Yeah.
for each other and competing, and it's awesome.
Well, like
Wh-
you
wh-
said, it's quite it's quite close knit. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Paul. You
Oh,
go.
I was just gonna ask, like, what kind of, do you have a similar experience to that, where something like, you went in not knowing anybody? Was there any like activity or class in particular that kind of brought you a group of friends, or anything like that?
Well, I think funnily enough, before I do answer that, is that I've actually been through a similar kind of experience. So, I mean, we whenever we went back to the UK, we went back every 2 years, and we'd only really go back for summer, which was kind of like a 2.5, 3 month gap or window, if you will. But I remember this one time, or maybe it was more than once. We either would have gone back maybe slightly earlier or slightly later, and so there was a period of time when I went back and I actually joined my old school. So this is the school that I was at from very, very young for a good few years, called a manual school. And so they had a few students, or it must have been only like little class of 10 or so, that were at the level when I joined back. And so I knew like one or two of the guys. There was a good mate of mine called Jono. He went there. And so that was very, very strange for me, because it was, it was taking it back. It was taking the class sizes down again. There was a lot of new people, only a few that I knew, and I knew I was only going to be there like a few months max. So I'm thinking, right, well, I'm gonna, there's barely going to be any time to develop. So obviously I tried my best and everything, but that was a very, very strange experience. I think giving yourself a year, you really got everything out of that you can, and I don't know, I wish I would have been able to do the same. But to answer your question before, I think the big thing that did it for me in school, it's got to be football. It's got to be football. Football was one of the very few things that I do miss about school, even like to this day. Football was it was everything. It was everything. We had training 3 times a week. We had matches, on quite a few Fridays. We'd have training on Saturdays. It was just all over the place, and as very similar to to the track team, it was such a close knit group. And so what and one thing I really loved about it is, so there must have been maybe like a 3 or 4 year window. So let's say that we, in the top team, it would have been like year 13, year 12, and then maybe a few year 11s as well. But when you're on the team, you're part of the team, and that made it for me. That made me feel so at peace. And so as soon as I was there, I was like, I need to get on the football team. And this is going to be something big for me. It's something that I enjoy, and it's just something that I need to get onto. And so that was a big thing for me. And I think it is amazing how from both of our stories, it's so clear that sports have a massive part to play in this, and that's very, very clear to me. And yeah, that was one thing that was major for me. And unfortunately, I did have quite a few good people in my school, and so it wasn't exactly a hard thing to do, where some people have obviously had quite harsh I don't know, school lives or whatever. But you and I have had quite the roller coaster when it comes to different avenues that we've taken to get to where we are now. I've been trying to think about how many different ways we've done, because obviously, so I've been homeschooled. I've been at a school where there's only 10. I've been at a a proper private school. I mean, to be fair, the amount of like different homeschool little things that we did was mental. So
I was going
I'd
to
say
say,
at least three or four.
Would you mind reminiscing with me for a moment? If we could just like name off one or two or three of the just wacky things we did in homeschool, because there's a number. I think one that comes to the top of my head was when your dad taught us PE and some of the lessons we did and by far the most, because often he would just kind of let us do what we wanted, which was quite funny. And so a lot of the time we just end up playing dodgeball in your yard. And it was,
yes, I do.
We did not
that.
have proper dodgeballs. It was like basketballs and soccer balls and
just
volleyballs, anything, which is not the proper way to do it. But I'll never forget learning cricket. That was quite fun. That's a game that was completely foreign to everybody except for you. And there were me, Brevin, Justin, Jeremiah, and you. So 5 of us plus your dad. So 6 total. Yeah. And learning, it was great. That was a really fun experience. But I'll never
one
forget
thing that sticks out for me, I can't remember when this was, but there was a teacher that we had who was called Joe, and so we called her Auntie Joe, and basically I can't even remember how we got onto this, but I think there was this one day I brought my gel to homeschool because I was like, you know what, I don't even know why, I can't justify it. But so then over the course of like the next 3 days, she gave me different hairstyles. So the first one was just a standard mohawk. It was wicked. I felt very cool. Second day, she gives me like a duo hawk. So we've got 2 coming out like this. I look like something from Star Wars. And then the third one, and probably by far the coolest, was she gave me like Darth Maul spikes of my hair. And I felt so cool. Cruising about looking like a weirdo, but I was like, you know what, I'm good. And just, I don't know, it was something that chances are wouldn't have happened if we'd been at a private school, or I don't know, if being homeschooled by like my mum or something. I don't know, I just think it would have been different. But I don't know, crazy times, but very, very entertaining. And I think it is nice to reminisce and think back upon what on earth happened during all those years. There's so much that's been crammed in, but it's nice to remember once in a while.
Indeed. One last memory I have was, do you remember the speech class we did with Auntie Allison? I remember one particular speech you gave. It was about, I believe you called them jelly babies. But it was what us Americans would call like Sour Patch Kids or something, gummy candy. And I don't remember what exactly the speech was about. It might have been a humorous thing about like a jelly baby getting eaten or something. I don't remember exactly what the speech was. But then at the end, you handed out candy, so it was like best speech ever.
So people were like, "Yo, Joel, nice."
Public speaking ability, top notch.
The amount of teachers that we must have been quite a few, and probably almost reaching 10, I'd say in total, for like different stuff. Mental. Oh, come on, good times. I've actually really enjoyed this, gents. This has been nice, like thinking back and remembering all those crazy times. I mean, unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. So just want to say a massive thank you for sticking with us. We have a great time doing this, and we hope you do as well. Please don't even hesitate to get in touch. Okay, all you have to do is comment in the comment section below, and just hit us up. Let us know what you're doing. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know that you're okay. We like hearing from you guys. But I mean, for the moment, my name's Joel Brown. He's Jensen Anderson. We're having a great time. This is a SpewnedIt podcast, and we'll see you in a week's time.